Today's guest built a $100 million empire at 23 years old.
I didn't have teenage years. I don't know what it's like being a teenager. I can't spend $1 billion to buy those teenage years back.
Raised in South London by a single mom, he watched her work several low-paying jobs to keep the lights on. But at 17, he made her this promise.
I've made multiple promises to my mom and I've made good on every single one of them. It was always a dream of hers to go to Paris. Paris is so close to London. She'd never been to Paris in her entire life. I'll take you to Paris.
In this episode, we'll dive into his rise to generational wealth, explore his controversial views on relationships and modern dating, and unveil the exact playbook that's made him one of the most influential names in business.
One thing that I just think needs to fucking stop right now is like shaming men who are trying. It's like, yeah, if he doesn't get you a Birkin, run. It's just like, shut the fuck up.
Iman Gadzhi. Welcome to the Jack Neel Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We're here in New York City at the WAP office. WAP is a huge education company, and yeah, we'll maybe get into that a bit later. I'm not sure how much we can talk about it, but
by the time this goes out, I think we would have made the announcement. So
awesome. Yeah.
Good to go.
We'll get on that in a bit, but I think a good place to start here, Iman, is what's the most common misconception people have about you?
That I'm not a normal person. And what I mean by that is, like, I got asked it maybe like 18 months ago. Someone was like, do you ever watch TikTok? And I'm like, yes. Like, they're like, do you, like, it was like so, like, I know he was like kind of joking. Like, he's like, do you ever like, you're just like normal person stuff. Like, do you ever like go for pizza? I'm like, yes. Like, you know, and I think it's funny, like half of what I do now on social media is like making it clear, like, I don't want to put myself on a pedestal. I'm not anyone's savior. I'm not anyone's, like, I'm a normal person living a life. And if there's parts of that you want to draw from, if there's parts of it that you respect, maybe there's parts of it you respect, there's maybe other parts of it that you don't drive with, that's fine. Like, I think that's a lot of what I try to do on social media these days, is just trying to remind people, like, yo, I'm just a normal human, just like figuring it out like the rest of us.
Why do you think people have that assumption about you, that you don't do normal people things? You're kind of categorized in this type of creator or entrepreneur that is all about monk mode, lock in, like no drugs, no alcohol, sleep at the same time every night, never go out to parties, never be in relationships, that kind of thing. Do you think you kind of get thrown in with that?
I think here's what it is. What you do when you first start, like, I kind of describe it kind of like getting a plane off the ground. Like, to get a plane off the ground, it takes so much fuel. It takes so much to actually get it off the ground. Now, once you're up, once you're in there, it just kind of sips fuel and it chugs along. And that's kind of the same way I view success. The truth is, the first few years, it is a little intense. Like, you kind of have to have that intensity to get you off the ground. But then the most successful people I know, they all, like, they eat whatever they want. The most successful people I know, they eat whatever they want. They're not like, they don't have a 15-step morning routine. They're not like super optimized. Like, listen, of course, they take their stuff seriously. I take my stuff seriously. I train every day. I make, you won't see me at like 11 o'clock eating KFC, for example, right? Now, at 9 p.m., you probably would see me eat a pizza, because I'm like, it's at the end of the day and there's different cadences throughout the day. So I think maybe sometimes people see my content where I'm helping out the 16-year-old me or the 17-year-old me. And the truth is, at 16, at 17, at 18, I really was locked in like that. And I had to have those seasons of intensity. And you go through these different seasons in life. And one season, a lot of times, especially those early seasons, demand that level of intensity and demand that level of, like, by the way, I hope people don't take this in the wrong way. Like, I was almost like a little autistic back then, right? Like, I had to be like, everything had to be so diligent to the point, and I had to be that way. And that served me to get to a certain point in life. But it's funny, then I started to plateau, and then I had to kind of like not be as stringent with my schedule and allow myself to have new hobbies and new interests. And it was only once I allowed myself to have like a less rigid schedule and have more hobbies and have more interests, that's when I started making more money again, and I reached like the next level of my career. So I think maybe I do get clumped in with some of those like really intense people, and maybe, people only see some of my videos, they don't watch the rest of it, and they don't see some of the nuance. So that's why like whenever I can have a nuanced conversation with someone, I always try to make it clear that like, yeah, I'm a normal human, and I can tell you like behind the curtains, all the people that say they like wake up at the same time every single day and everything is regimented and this and that, blah, blah, like it's not like that at the top, at the highest echelons. At the highest echelons, like everyone is just like, yeah, they all have their own weird quirks and their own weird, like, it's not as stringent as when you first start.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there was an interview in 2019 that you did, and someone had asked you the best piece of advice you'd received. And it was something along the lines of, you have so much time, you're so young, like kind of don't worry about it. But a few months ago, you tweeted something like, lack of urgency is killing you. So what do you have time for and what is urgent?
That's a very astute observation. I think it's this weird juxtaposition where basically what happens is in my opinion, in the short term, you need to have this feeling of urgency. And when I say the short term, I mean like today. Like you need to have this feeling of urgency and this like level of almost agitation. And by the way, this is also if you want to be very successful. Not everyone wants it. And by the way, that's also cool. And I think that's also the other thing that I try to really make it clear to people is like, just because I've accomplished this doesn't mean that that's success. And I always try to like, someone's like, oh, would you consider yourself successful? I'm like, I consider myself successful because I know what I want from life and I'm close to that. And now for another person, that might be making $50,000 and, you know, being able to surf all year round. Like I have a friend like that who literally started a business because he literally wanted to work as little as humanly possible. This is 15, 20 years ago. Wanted to work as little as humanly possible. So that way the rest of the year he could just surf. And that is success to him. And so we'll get on all that, back to that stuff later. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that in the short term, as in day to day, you need that level of agitation. Like you need to have that feeling of urgency. But from a macro perspective, as in like giving yourself a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year timeline, you have to be patient. So it's this weird, a lot of life is a juxtaposition where it's like you have to believe two things at the same time. So short term, you have to have this feeling of urgency. But then in the more medium term, you have to have this understanding that like you are young. You know, you are young and you have time. And at the end of the day, there's only so much you can push. Like the only thing stopping you from reaching your goals is time. Now you can shrink that time down. Like let's say it takes this long for you to achieve your goals. Maybe you can shrink that down to like here, but time still has to play out. And that's why everyone needs to understand, like you still have to be patient and let things come as they may.
And there's also an inverse effect, I guess, of if you were going to try to make $1 million as quickly as possible, that might be a different path than making $100 million as quickly as possible. It would be two different paths, you know? On the urgency thing, what would you say maybe for you, or what would you recommend for other people to kind of put on the back burner in their early 20s? Like what isn't important right now and what are kind of the priorities?
Well, here's where it gets nuanced once again, because it's just like I didn't have teenage years. I don't know what it's like being a teenager. And does that mean that I've lived because once again, just my situation with my mom, yeah, I just kind of had to become the man of the house when I was 11, 12 years old. So yeah, it's just, does that mean that I've had a better life than someone else? Because like no amount of, let's say I had I could spend $1 billion right now, or let's say I had $1 billion in my bank account. I can't spend $1 billion to buy those teenage years back. And sometimes people tell me about teenage years, or even not to say that you should go. I guess it's up to the viewers. But even like college experiences, sometimes I hear people talk about their college experiences. And I'm like, yo, that sounds fucking sick. Like I would have loved to experience that. So that's the issue. Like when you're giving real advice, there's just so much nuance when it comes to this stuff. So I can't tell you what's right or wrong. All I can say is if you do want to be very successful, of course, the more successful you want to be, the more sacrifices you have to make. The more successful you want to be, the more intense your life has to be. And that's why I always tell people as well, like usually there's a sweet spot. It's the same thing with like training. Like if you train 3 times a week, people will be like, okay, you could probably train. Well, if you don't train at all, people are gonna be like, okay, that's not good for you. You should train. If you train once a week, they're like, okay, cool. Like at least you're getting started, but like do more. You go up to 3, 5, and these are all positive improvements. At 7 times a week, someone might go, okay, this is, you're doing quite a lot here. If you start training 2 or 3 times a day, people are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, well, you're doing more harm than good. And people understand that when it comes to something like training, but they don't view money in the same way. And they're like, more money, the better. Now, of course, if you could make 100K or 100 million in a year and it comes with the same level of responsibility, then of course make 100 million in a year, like without a doubt. But I've never seen a case where you make more money, but it doesn't come with more responsibility. So that's why you always there is no correct answer to these things. Like it's unique to you, and I just think anyone telling you have to live this kind of life or this kind of life, it's not very authentic.
Most advice is bad advice. And I've said this on podcasts before, like really as a viewer, you should try to pick out the things that pertain specifically to you, or try to take the advice and see like what are the different ways it could apply to my life. A lot of people listen to podcasts or they listen to creators and they're like, oh, this is the answer. I should try to be exactly like this person. But that's often not most beneficial because they don't even know what they truly want. And it's definitely not the same thing as that creator. You made a video a while back that I found very interesting on dopamine. Why should, maybe not everyone, actually probably everyone, why should everyone do a dopamine detox?
Well, I look at dopamine detoxes in the same way I look at fasting. Fasting is a modality that's been used for thousands and thousands of years because I think it's good. I mean, even me personally, actually, I was thinking when after this, I have one more stop back to Dubai. But on my way, once I get back to Dubai, I was thinking I need to do a fast because sometimes you just you need a reset. And that's what a dopamine detox does for you. And for example, that's even fasting can be a part of dopamine detoxing, or fasting kind of provides those same sort of benefits, which is you just need a reset of your baseline. And it's whether that's caffeine, whether that's dopamine, whether that's whatever it may be in your life. Having that reset then allows you to find more meaning in things you're doing. The issue is if your dopamine receptors are just consistently fried, then when you go to do day-to-day tasks, now all of a sudden it doesn't give you the same sort of pleasure signals as something like scrolling on TikTok or playing video games. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with those things. If you want to do those things, that's fine. As I said, there's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of to really make something of yourself in a big way, if that's what people truly want. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot, and you really have to find ways to enjoy the work. And when you are constantly scrolling on TikTok or playing video games or doing all these other things, it's frying your dopamine receptors so much to the point where you can't sit down for even an hour and focus on one task. And if you can't do that, it's very hard to make something of your career.
Have you always been a focused person, or would you say that's something you've built?
It's something I wouldn't say I'm focused. And even right now, I wouldn't say I'm a focused person. It's something that I had to focus on for a specific season of my life. And once again, this goes back to what I was saying. I remember when I was younger, I used to watch Gary Vee videos, and I was like, all he was doing was just doing meetings and on calls. And I was like, that's not real entrepreneurship. You're not sat down focused on one task. And it's I owe him an apology because now that's all I do. All I do is meetings and on calls. I don't really sit down and focus on one specific task. Now I might have something that's in the back of my mind and a key decision that maybe I might have to go for a walk and think about it. But really computer work or sit down building something, almost never have to do that. So it was a season of my life where, because I was basically the whole business, I had to develop that skill.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of entrepreneurs are kind of optimizing for deep work, but long term, that's not really the most high leverage thing they can be doing. It's activities like networking or just mindfulness, and just ideating on the business as a whole. Because if you're doing hours and hours of deep work, you're kind of in the business instead of working on the business. What are the most profitable businesses for 2025?
Listen, there's many profitable businesses. It just depends on your risk tolerance. And there's a laundry list of factors that you need to take into consideration. So there's certain businesses where can be very profitable. The issue is you can also lose a lot of money. So when it comes to beginners specifically, I don't like businesses where failing spectacularly means that you've bankrupted yourself. I like businesses where you can fail for 6 months, 12 months. And by the way, I don't view anything as a failure. I view it as you're getting closer and closer. You're closing that gap to success. So for me, honestly, take your pick. Take your pick, just as long as it's something where you can fail for 6 months or 12 months. And like the worst case scenario is, okay, maybe you're spending $50 or $100 a month on software costs, you know, but just as long as you're not risking like 30 grand on physical stocks. Like I have businesses in mind where I'm sending a $500,000, $1 million wire for our next batch of stock. And like, I've even had situations in the past where I've had, even during COVID times, I've had stock held, like some of my physical product brands where I've had stock held. And it's like, for me, that's fine because, you know, I have other cash flow from other businesses. But for someone else, if that's their entire livelihood, to have stock held at customs for 3 months is scary. And I mean, even now, recently at one of my physical product businesses, we had a big packaging issue that set us back 6 weeks. And it's like, not only set us back 6 weeks, but, you know, there was some, long story short, we got, we're out of about 80 grand worth of packaging there. So we lost 80 grand. And the more important thing is we pushed back 6 weeks on release. So like, these are things that in my position is fine now to have that sort of risk tolerance. But as a beginner, it really gives me a lot of anxiety, like beginners pouring a lot of money, or let's say, you know, you're playing around with different investments and stuff like that. And it can be very easy to lose it all. And that gives me anxiety. So, I mean, listen, even for example, what we do here at WAP, when it comes to digital products, I like businesses like that where there's no situation where you're out 30 grand because you've invested into a whole bunch of ads or a whole bunch of a physical product stock, and now you're in a sticky situation.
I guess with the knowledge you have now, if you were back in high school and you wanted to make 10K a month, what would be the industry or type of service you would offer?
Anything digital product related. So either selling a digital product or services. Digital product or services.
And can you go a little more specific on what type of digital product, how you'd go about doing it? Like, what could someone tangibly do after this podcast to kind of make 10K a month in high school?
Yeah, so obviously, like, you know, a large part of what I do is looking at the numbers and looking at the data and looking at like how our users are using WAP. And the average user right now on WAP makes $9,000 a month, which I think is fucking spectacular. And we have people making money in like all sorts of different ways. Like, for example, there's a guy right now making $8,000 a month selling Fortnite maps. So he sells that as a digital product.
It's a great niche.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great niche. And you know, we've got someone else who's making $71,000 a month showing people how to make money trading Pokemon cards. And, you know, these are things like, I don't know if you remember, like when I was like 12 or 13, I don't think I've actually said this anywhere. I used to like trade FIFA Ultimate Team coins. I don't know if you know what that is. It's FIFA, like a football game. Yeah. But like I used to trade and used to make money on Ultimate Team. And I used to sell it, the coins to the kids at school. So like, if you can learn how to make money with that, like now you're playing video games, but you're also making money on the back of it. So whether that be with Fortnite or you know, people who just geek out about like, you know, Pokemon, now all of a sudden you're making a real tangible, solid business out of it. So, and those are some examples of digital products. Finding, like, I'll give you another example, and I'm very excited to get more cases like this on WAP. There's a digital product out there that's made $150 million, and it's a $30 Excel course.
Is that Miss Excel, or is that
no?
Okay. Yeah.
I know who you're talking about though. No, the course has been around for like a long time, and the person teaching it, I don't know their credentials. I don't even know how you have like qualifications for Excel. Like, and people don't really care. They're just like, they see it. There's some good reviews. They see that like people have bought it. I don't need to know if you're an expert. All I need to know is the product is about $30. It has some good reviews. I want to go from beginner to intermediate or advanced in Excel, and voila. So I just like other examples like Shopify themes, you know, those other digital products you can sell, like anything in that sphere, or, you know, even if you just geek out about a certain topic, creating a community around these things. These are all ways to make money where you're not going to invest 30 grand into physical stocks, like physical stock, whether that be FBA or building a brand, or, you know, invest $10,000 into Facebook ads to validate, you know, some drop shipping products. And by the way, not like those business models can work. I want to make that very clear. There's money to be made in those models. I don't want to like discredit them whatsoever. this is just my personal philosophy and the personal, the way I see the world. It gives me a lot of anxiety when I see beginners risking a lot of money. That's what I mean when I say digital products. And then when I say services is like for example, me, I start off with agency. So I started off with agency. I got my first agency client in 2016. It was a baby client. It was like $300 a month or 300 pounds a month, I should say. And, I was just doing creative services back then. So like my background is in photo video. So I would like shoot video services, photos for clients and stuff like that. Now, that's an example of a service where it was a skill that I was already learning because I picked up a camera. I started uploading on vlogs on YouTube, but just out of personal interest. And that's something that I could do for local businesses. And then eventually we started doing advertising. So we moved to an advertising agency. But even like, going back to WAP, like we have a content reward system. So clipping, like there's people making bank by clipping, right? So we have clippers that are making thousands of dollars a month just by clipping other people's content. Like at one point I was spending, this is 2 years ago, like I've had internal clipping department for 2.5 years. At the height of it, I was spending $250,000 a month on my short form, like clipping department. So that's an example where like to learn simple editing skills, once again, to buy a $30 digital product or $100 digital product and learn how to clip content and then either work for a company or, for example, use a platform like WAP where you can find clipping opportunities and clip directly on platform. Listen, are you going to be a multimillionaire from it? No, of course not. But like, it's a foot through the door. And that's the other thing sometimes that is very frustrating to see, like people wanting to jump all the way to the end of the journey. Because I get this a lot. I've had this criticism. People are like, why are you telling me to do one thing when I should just do what you do? It's like, yeah, I mean, I get it, but some of the moves I make, like, investing in companies, for example, cost me millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like, that's not how I started. So I started off by doing simple services for local businesses. So yeah, are these opportunities going to make you a multimillionaire? No, but it's your foot through the door.
Yeah, it's hard to know what it would feel like to make $1 million or know what it would take if you haven't even made 100K. People can't really think that far ahead of the success that they've already had. I want to go back to the clipping thing. I do really think that's a great opportunity for people because there are so many podcasts just in general and so many streamers that people aren't doing clips for, that they could just monetize off of creator fund programs and do things like a WAP campaign. Shameless plug, this podcast will likely have a WAP campaign attached to it. So if someone wants to make some money, you can literally just clip a segment of this podcast. And my team is not fast enough to clip every single second of this video. So go for it.
And it's also cool because you're now giving back to your fans. Like I find that pretty fucking cool that like you're assigning a budget and you're paying out directly to the people that like are supporting you. So it's like, it keeps them, because right now, if you think about how much money is going into Facebook ads or going into Google ads, like of course, great platforms have done a lot for all of us, from all of our businesses. But at the end of the day, you're paying these platforms directly. You're just making these platforms richer. Whereas, let's say you're putting 5K into content rewards. It's like you're making your fans richer, but you're still accomplishing advertising, and you're accomplishing advertising at like a, 10% or 5% the CPM of what it would cost on Facebook.
That makes sense. So what is your involvement with WAP?
New co-owner. So yeah, it's been a journey. Not a decision I took lightly. Obviously a lot of money. But more so than that, this is $100 billion race for any of these other any platform that's involved in online digital products, informational products, info products, online courses, coaching. This is a $100 billion race. If I look at what happened with e-commerce between 2012 to 2022, and you look at all the graphs, it's the exact same thing that's happening with digital products, one for one. So like, the reason why it was such a big decision is, for me, it's like taking a major stake in Shopify and being a co-owner in the business back in like 2012. It's like, this can be the biggest play of your entire career. obviously there's a few runners in the race, but when I look at WAP specifically, when I look at WAP specifically, there's nothing else that's comparable to it. And the reason I say that is because you have, as a creator, you can make money. So you can sell a coaching or digital product, whether that be a Fortnite map, whether that be a course, coaching program, community, whatever it may be. You can do that, and then so it's the payment processing and the checkout, but then it's also the delivery. Because let's say, for example, Shopify, when someone buys, like, let's say my eyewear brand, Shopify does the payments and the checkout. And by the way, you don't need to use Shopify payments, but that's a separate conversation. I still have to use a 3PL to deliver it to the customer. So I am still responsible for getting the product to the customer. Whereas with WAP, it's like it's payments, checkout, but then they also give the product to the customer. So it's the delivery of the actual product. And then let's say, for example, you want to make more money with your offer. Now you can set a budget rather than spending $10K a month on Facebook. For $1K, you can get the exact same exposure on using content rewards. So now you say, okay, cool, I'm going to spend $1K a month and put that towards my advertising. Clippers, go do your thing. Go fucking bring me for that price, a million views. I don't want this to turn into a too much of a WAP promo, but just so you guys understand, it's, I had offers from every single company in the space, and obviously it's a big, I do okay for myself. But nonetheless, it's a very substantial part of my net worth and a big chunk of money. So not only from a financial perspective, but also from a positioning perspective, because there were other companies that financially looked like good propositions, but I didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. And I knew that making the investments and taking a stake to become a co-owner in those companies, I would be on the wrong side of history. And WAP it's a horse like I've never seen before.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you made a comparison of it to Shopify. And I heard the co-founders say that the other day when I was here. But it seems as though it could be compared to Amazon, because it kind of has that feature of like a strip mall that you see all the products on the page and they do the fulfillment there. Because Shopify, it's the tools to build your own store. Mm-hmm. But ultimately it would end up going on Amazon, and that would be the highest lever. Do you think WAP could be bigger than Amazon?
Honestly, yeah. And the reason why I say that is because of advertising. With the content rewards, I'm telling you right now, like obviously, there's stuff that we can't, talk about, but and going back to what I was discussing of services, like, listen, if you become a clipper, the chances of you making 20 grand a month is all, next to nothing, right? Listen, there's some people that do it, but it's a business where, it's a side hustle where you can make $1K, $3K, maybe $5K a month. But the reason I bring that up is we have, without going into specifics, we have massive businesses coming to us right now and saying, listen, by the end of the year, we'd like to put $10 million monthly of our budget, of our advertising budget, into content rewards. So our issue right now isn't actually the buyer, which should be great for the people listening. Our issue isn't the buyers. Our issue is getting the clippers. So it's one of those cool situations where we have the money there. People want to spend the money. We just need enough clippers to fulfill that demand. Yeah. So to answer your question of do I think it would be bigger than Amazon, the reason I say yes is because at the end of the day, Amazon isn't advertising as well. Amazon isn't advertising, whereas WAP is. That's why I say you can't compare it to anything. It's its own beast, where it's fulfillment that you're correct. Amazon does. Amazon does payments, checkout, marketplace, and fulfillment through FBA. But it's not an advertising platform. We're an advertising platform as well. And by the way, content rewards goes so much deeper than just clipping. For example, now you start to bring in Upwork and Fiverr, because let's say you need thumbnails. I have 3 full-time in-house thumbnail designers, full-time. And, we're doing rehashes every single day, which is why our content keeps, performing incredibly well, because we're constantly going back, rehashing titles, thumbnails, all this stuff. And that makes sense for me with the size of my businesses. But for most people, that's overkill. But if you can do a content rewards and say, okay, every week I'm going to give away $100 for the thumbnail that I choose. Listen, guys, submit your thumbnails, whichever one I end up choosing, I'm going to give $100 to. So now, rather than me who's spending whatever, let's call it, over 10 grand a month on having an in-house team do that, you can pretty much get the same result for $400. So this is where, you know, when you think about it like that, it's just, that's why I say you can't compare it to anything else out there.
Do you think we'll get to a place with content where people's personal pages don't matter that much and it'll be more so about the distribution? And I know it's something you've done and kind of were a trailblazer of the whole mass distribution of your content across multiple theme pages. But do you think we'll start seeing that with long form YouTube, like different thumbnails, and essentially you would upload your content to something like WAP and it'd be content rewards and there are like 30 people that post your YouTube video? And do you think that'll be the future of content and it'll be more so similar to Facebook ads?
I think we're already somewhat in that direction. I mean, when you look at, I don't think followers or subscribers count like matters anymore. Like we're already in that place. So if you give the algorithm more chances to pop off, like, as you said, if I take my latest vlog and I say, of course I'm going to post on my main channel, but then I'm also going to give it to people so they can post it on secondary channels. And, you know, maybe my channel gets X amount of views, but then all of the other secondary accounts get X amount of views. And I say, you know, inside the content rewards, cool, just make sure you have this link back to main channel, or make sure you have this link to whatever funnel or VSL or whatever products being sold. I think we're already transitioning to that place. What's
one thing everyone should buy once they've made $100,000? I know it's specific to people, or what's a purchase you made when you made your first $100,000 that was really worth it?
I took my mom to Paris. So we grew up in London. And yeah, I also like, I want to make something clear because you said something in the intro, like in no way, shape or form did I grow up in poverty. Like in no way, shape or form was like, we never struggled for meals. We never it was just it's a very common story, which is you see your mom, single mom, you know, my stepdad cut us off when I was about 11 or 12. She worked at NHS, which is like the public healthcare service. Okay. So she was a receptionist there, which is rough because, like, you know, I know you guys don't have public healthcare here, but in the UK, like, public healthcare is free, but that also means it's very backlogged, and that also means that like people can get very intense and very like pushy and aggressive. So just like between that, and she also worked at a place called Harrods, a retail job, and that was for a few years when basically like she was tucking away money because. Yeah, my mom was very, very frugal. And then eventually that money ran out once, you know, my stepdad cut us off. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like we were homeless or this, that. It was just, you see someone you love who's in pain. And I don't know, maybe like for the viewers, this won't mean anything, but like Paris is so close to London. Like Paris is so close to London. And like my mom, when she moved to London, it was always a dream of hers to like, go to Paris. I think like for women, that's like a very like idealistic thing. Like she'd never been to Paris in her entire life. And going to Paris, it's not like it's a very expensive thing from London. You know, traveling within Europe is pretty cheap. And just small things like that. The fact that like when I was 17, I made a promise to her, like growing up, like I'll take you to Paris. It's not like the most expensive thing on earth, you know, only costs like a couple grand, you know, for the entire trip or whatever, the way we did to do it nicely. But just, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. Like there's nothing you can buy that gives you the same level of joy as seeing like a loved one or like making a promise to a loved one. Cause I feel like we all make these promises to our loved ones. And by the way, if you don't, I think it's probably one of the most powerful things that you can do to guarantee your success. Because when you make a promise, because I've made multiple promises to my mom and I've made good on every single one of them. Even ones that I didn't know if I could do, or I thought it would take me, you know, multiple decades to do so. And yeah, I know that people will do more for their loved ones than they will for themselves. And that's a much stronger anchor than like, I want X, Y, Z thing.
Yeah, that's something I've often critiqued. I'm shocked that so many of these guys that make content and they like buy a Lamborghini or buy some nice watch. And I'm like, have you taken care of your parents first? And I would guess that some of the time that's not the case. But what was another promise you made to your mom?
Promise I made to my mom was to buy her a dream house. So buy her a dream house and have a Range Rover parked in front. That's actually word for word my promise, and made good on that promise. Range Rover was a funny one. She drove it once in 6 months, and then I sold it because she said it was too big for her. Like it's too big in London. But whatever, at least tick that off the list. Yeah, listen, that was a very big one for me. I thought it would take longer to accomplish it. Obviously, was able to do it at relatively young, at 23. So yeah, London's very similar to New York. Like, you know, in London, like to buy a box costs $2 million.
Is there anything kind of materialistic, or whether it's for your health or fitness, that you would say was a worthwhile purchase when you were at maybe 100K net worth or $1 million net worth?
I think anything that gets you more excited to work, I always tell people to spend money on. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say you start seeing some success, like reward yourself with maybe a new like Herman Miller chair, maybe reward yourself with like the latest MacBook, like reward yourself with maybe some new working headphones, like some whatever it is that can get you more, maybe a nice new desk, like a stand-up desk, like anything where you're like, fuck, I feel better about showing up to my desk every day. You know, anything like that. Or, you know, when it comes to sleep, like any wearable tech that like helps you focus on your sleep. Like one of my old agency clients is a company called Oura Ring.
Yeah.
Back in
Got one on.
yeah, there we go. Back in 2018, and whether that's Oura Ring, whether that's a Whoop, whether that's it's a little bit more expensive, but something like an 8 Sleep. Like, these are things where, you know, you're investing money, but now all of a sudden you feel like you spent money, but you're more excited to be the better version of you. So anything like that, anything health related, maybe a better gym membership. I would do all that stuff before like any materialistic. I mean, eventually, you know, treat yourself. Like, if you have a dream, everyone assigns different meaning to different things. So, and that annoys me sometimes when people try to shame someone else, like, oh, why'd he spend this much? It's like, also, like, none of your fucking business, quite frankly. Like, maybe you don't find meaning in it, because you know, I have very wealthy friends of mine that will spend eye-watering sums of money on certain things, but then I'm like, I can't believe they would spend that much. Like, sometimes I have to stop myself. I'm like, fuck, that's so much money. But then I remember that, like, they're just, if I think about how much more money they have compared to me, I'm like, well, for me, it's the same thing as like buying like maybe, I don't know, like a new car, which of course isn't like a small thing, but it's not like, I don't fret over it. So yeah, all that to say that spend money on whatever you find value. But in those early stages, I think anything you can spend money on that gets you more excited to like train more or work more. For example, like a cleaner, like that's something that frees up, you know, hours of your week that, you know, you're not going to do that when you first start, but maybe once you start hitting, you know, 5K months, 10K months, like having a clean space is invaluable. Like laundry services, you know, where they come pick up your laundry and then bring it back to you. Maybe meal prep, like these things that just improve your quality of life rather than like, okay, cool, you've got like a new whatever shirt or something.
Is there anything material that makes you more confident?
I think the way I dress makes me confident, but I don't think you need to spend crazy amounts of money. The way I dress, if someone else dressed this way, it might make them less confident. So I think you just like, I really respect, even I have friends of mine, obviously I dress like a bit of a grandpa, but I have friends of mine that just like genuinely love drip. Like, it's not like they're not trying to show off, they're not trying to impress people. Like, they'll find like old vintage pieces and this and that of like Chrome Hearts or Louis Vuitton. Like, they genuinely love drip. Like, that's their character and that works for them. So I think the way you dress is very important. I don't think you need to spend a lot of money on it. But yeah, dressing in a way that, I mean, it's an expression of oneself.
Something I was talking with her about, I thought it was interesting. I was like, you know, people really didn't start like our age wearing Ralph Lauren, this old money style, until a man made content about it. Do you think that was a coincidence, or do you think you maybe had some effect on culture there?
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest. I will give myself credit there. I do think I brought a lot of people that maybe wouldn't have found it like cool. Like, I have, you know, one of my, there's a guy on Instagram called Stad Guy. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm an investor in his company. And he, like, because, you know, the jokes are so niche, like, he's done so much for Loro Piana. It's insane. Like, you know, the amount of exposure they've had because of it, but it's still relatively like niche. Like, you have to be in that world. Whereas I think what I've done is I've exposed a lot of people to this way of dressing, which I guess maybe it's just very European. I guess it's a European style of dressing. And, you know, I expose a lot of people that now look at this style of dressing and they're like, oh, that's cool. Whereas, you know, maybe 5 years ago, they're like, that's lame, or that's not like loud enough, or that's not like, and I think, I don't know, for me, my style, I never wanted to be like too offensive. And I just think that I know wearing something like this, I can walk into any room and not be overdressed or underdressed. And that's also why I don't wear like 3-piece suits, because then you start going the opposite end where it's like, now you go into certain rooms and it's like, okay, this is, you know, chill out, bro. So yeah, I do think I will give myself credit there that I think I brought a lot of people into this way of dressing.
Yeah, I appreciate your humility about it, but I do think you made a very big impact on culture with your fashion. Where do you get your fashion sense from?
I think it's just a European thing. And, you know, I will say I've never been like a big labels kind of guy. But when 2017, 2018, when I did start making some money, you know, every once in a while I would have maybe like a one brand or something. And I think it's just like growing up in Europe, like it's a very, you just don't really do it.
Yeah.
It's just not as common there. And I think also in my world, funnily enough, I never really networked or hung around people my age or in this like online entrepreneurship space. In general, that's just generally not who I really spend time with. I spend time with my friends who are far more successful than me, usually older than me. And I observe the way that they dress, and it's never with logos or labels. Now, I have friends of mine that are super successful. They dress like kind of homeless, but it's still with no logos, because that's, in their world, that's what's accepted. You know, they're in, for example, the VC world, and it just, in that world, it's like, yeah, this would be like off-putting to them. So yeah, I think it's just product of my environment, quite frankly.
What's the most unnecessary purchase you've ever made?
I can tell you one. Listen, there's lots of things that are unnecessary. Definitely, yeah. I guess it's very subjective what's unnecessary, because sometimes, for example, I buy things like, whether that be like legacy businesses or legacy domains or legacy properties that I know I don't need. I know I'm never going to make money. I'm not going to lose crazy amounts of money, but I just want it in my possession. But dumb purchases, there's one I can think of specifically. It was in April, sometime early 2022. I bought 3 Bored Apes.
Bored Apes.
Because I bought 3 Bored Apes because like in that space, I was like, I came from like traditional business space. And I was like, why? These people are so weird. Like they keep like, why? It's like this flex. And eventually I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'll just buy 3. Like, and yeah, that was very stupid. I think I bought each one for $400K. So $1.2 million in Bored Apes.
Do you still have those?
I sold 2 that I really just didn't care about. Like, honestly, and that's an important lesson. Like when you make ego purchases, I was like, whatever. That was one of the rare times my ego kind of got the best of me. And I was like, you know, like, fuck it. Like, I'll just buy 3 just cause, which is just, it's stupid. And it's just 100% ego. And yeah, you know, whatever, lessons learned there. But as they were coming down, I think I sold it. I bought them all for $400K. I sold 2 for $200K. And then 1, which is like a Bored Ape that is like smoking a cigar, and it's got like a USSR hat, originally from Russia. So that one I kept. I don't know. It's probably worth fuck all, but I just find it cute.
Yeah, I think I bought some back in 2021, not Bored Apes, but some other NFT, and I just ended up keeping them because the market went to shit. And I was like, well, maybe one day it'll be worth something. At 17, this might be a bit personal, but what was your net worth at 17 years old?
I mean, really, that net worth at 17 is kind of how much cash you have in the bank. Probably about 100K.
How about 21?
20, it depends what time of 20. 21 was a very rocky year for me. Basically, 2022 in November, I put $1 million into Bitcoin. So that's why I ask it 2021. I mean, there was lows of like, let's say my entire net worth would have been like 5 million. There was peaks of 15. It was a very crypto, it was a very treacherous year.
How about now?
Well, now is where it gets more sticky, because then you have to look at the price of some of your assets. And like, once again, those become very subjective. Like what is, let's say, for example, my stake in this company worth? what's my stake in this business worth? What's even domains? Like I have domains that are multi-million-dollar domains. I just wanted the domains and I'm sitting on them. Now, let's say, for example, I wanted to, like we had to do a net worth by fire sale. Like as in like by next week, if you had to sell all of your assets and be worth this much, now, let's say a domain that's worth $4 million, I would have to fire sale it for $1 million. There's not much liquidity in the domain market. So this is where like when you
if you had a year maybe to sell everything off.
Once again, it just gets very subjective. Let me put it this way. It's over 100 now.
It's over 100?
Yeah. That I can comfortably say.
At what age would you say it would be $1 billion?
I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get there. I think, the past year or so, all I've been doing is just investing in companies, and that's been like my new soiree. And I'm coming in this world of sharks as a tiny little fish, and having to basically learn and absorb everything and learn all the pitfalls and how people try to fuck you and this and that. And so in the world of investing, I've done relatively decent in the last year or so. I'm lucky to have some very good advisors in that space. So I don't know if I can't really answer that one.
It's interesting how much leverage your personal brand has kind of given you to invest and start so many companies. On the topic of personal brand, I don't want to go into it too much because you've made some great videos about it in your interview with Simon Squibb. Guys, you should definitely check that out. It goes really deep into it. But what's the number one mistake people make when building a personal brand?
Number one mistake is not being intentional. And, for example, you just mentioned one benefit. In the last year and a half, it's been the biggest benefit. And definitely in the next 5 years, it'll be by far the biggest benefit. I just kind of played dumb online for a few years. Like I didn't really tell people what I'm doing. I didn't really tell people behind the scenes what was going on. And yeah, all that to say, now for me, the two biggest benefits for my personal brand is hiring and deal flow, and also the terms I get when I'm actually investing in companies. Now there's specific examples. Like the other day I had a napkin company that's worth $60 million. It's a napkin advertising business. It's worth $60 million. They wanted me to invest, and I was like, the terms that I would want, I can't really ask of you, and I wouldn't even want you to give it to me because I don't have enough value add here. So I'm not gonna sit here and try to ask for X amount discounted equity when like, I just don't, even myself, I don't feel like I deserve that. So I think it's just a matter of deciding what you want, what benefits do you want from your personal brand. Now, when I first started my personal brand, I didn't monetize my personal brand for like 2.5 years. Like for me, it was just a diary. Like I was just uploading vlogs because there wasn't as much of a community back then of people making money online and entrepreneurship and all this stuff. So it was kind of like my diary to myself, and it was also a way for me to connect with people online. So it went from that to eventually I started actually getting agency clients from my personal brand. So I guess I didn't directly monetize it for 2.5 years, but I started getting some agency clients like that. A company, the first big client I ever had, it was a company called Athlete back then. They're called Gemflow now. They came in from a video I posted on YouTube. So it's started helping build the businesses up. So it's kind of morphed the main benefits I get from the personal brand as time goes on. So it's a very long-winded way to basically say, what are you trying to get out of it? And what I mean by that is I see people posting really broad, like they'll see short form stuff that we do and they post really broad content, and yet they're trying to sell high ticket B2B services. And it's like, what does your really broad video about like 7 millionaire mindset tips, like what the fuck does that have to do with like getting enterprise clients? So you just have to be very intentional and ask yourself, what do you want? And also don't correlate views with success. Like views can mean success. It just depends what kind of game you're playing, what kind of game you're playing on the front. Because sometimes there's one game that you're letting people see you play, and then how are you actually playing it on the back end in terms of monetization. So that's what I would say to people: be very intentional and decide, what are you using social media for?
Would you advise most people to kind of start with the higher ticket, very niche audience route?
100%. Yeah, without a doubt.
That was probably the nugget I took out of that interview with Simon. Was you'd said something along the lines of creating a micro personal brand. Mm-hmm. And that's something I follow your backup Instagram page. And I find it very interesting, your strategy there. Where did you learn that from, and how has that been beneficial to you?
In terms of like siloing out to multiple accounts?
Yeah.
Listen, the honest truth is you in your position probably won't watch my main YouTube channel. You know, you're too successful. And it's maybe a little too, it's for an earlier career stage. But I have a business channel now. My business channel video, you might watch because you're like, okay, cool. I want to learn like the back end SOP systems for his thumbnail rehashing, for, his cart abandonment flow, like all of these like more niche topics, but that's relatable to you. And I also know that I have friends of mine that are super successful. They are not in the space. They don't like, even though they're super successful business owners, they don't give a shit about cart abandonment flows. They're not going to watch my main YouTube, but they religiously watch my vlogs. And these are like multi-hundred millionaires and sometimes even multi-billionaires, but just because they find it entertaining. And then I have some people that only watch my short form, but won't watch YouTube. So like, I just kind of have it in a way there's something for everyone. Now, I don't recommend people do that. Once again, that's very specific to my business goals. But the reason I created the business channel, or for example, the business Instagram, is because the more niche the advice, the more niche the market. Okay, so like if I gave hard-hitting business advice on my main Instagram, like very specific nitty-gritty stuff, the main audience would be like, this is kind of going over our head. Like I don't drive with this. And vice versa, if you're giving like very open-ended, like beginner content advice on the to an audience that is high level, such as yourself, they're not going to drive with it. So it's just a matter of like knowing who your audience is, and knowing who you want to attract. And I know this, like everyone at home is like, okay, cool, like no shit, Sherlock. Like that sounds like very simple advice, but you'd be surprised how many people are getting this wrong, and how many people are creating content and not thinking, okay, I'm creating this content, or I'm speaking, my messaging is this, but how does this tie back to the business back end? Like what I'm actually trying to accomplish, on the back of it.
Yeah, I have experience with that as making podcast content now, because my goal is really just how do I get more impressive guests, maybe guests with more followers that will do a really good podcast. And the only way to really do that with the content is get as many views as possible. But in reality, these guests don't realize what you're saying, which is that a niche podcast with, say, 3,000 subscribers could be way more beneficial for their business and for their goals if they went on it, if it hit the right audience.
Have you ever seen Harry Stebbings? He has a podcast called 20 VC.
I've heard of people talk about this.
Yeah. So he has like crazy, he has some crazy, founder of Salesforce, Revolut, like crazy guests on. And this guy, I think maybe he's at 200,000 subscribers, something like that right now. He's raised $500 million from his podcast. $500 million. You think about 2 and 20 fees. Bro, the guy's making fucking tens of millions of dollars a year. He's killing it. And that was all from having a niche podcast. Now, that's not like a super niche topic. Of course, anyone who's in that world is interested. But that goes to show, people think that you need to play this game of having... Now, bear in mind, I'm also speaking as someone who does play the game of views. I still do it strategically, but once again, that's because I have the business back end. Like I have a consumable brand, I have a eyewear brand, I have a $30-ish a month mobile app. Like, you can get started on WAP for free. Like I have these ways to monetize a broad audience, but if I only had, like we have a B2B licensing program called A2FL, like it's not like we don't work with beginners. Like we don't work with beginners. Like it's true B2B. If you don't have a successful business already running, like we just simply don't work with you. And we will not take your money. So with that, if all I was selling was A2FL, I would not have all these other channels, because like what does like me doing broad market content that helps like the 17-year-old version of myself or 16-year-old version of myself, what does that have to do with getting an enterprise client? So this is where, you need to know what your goal is. For example, in your case, your goal is, I'm trying to get as many views as possible, because then I'm trying to get higher caliber of guests, and obviously guests, these guests want to make sure that they're coming on a podcast with great visibility, millions of views, all this stuff. Now, let's say, for example, do you sell anything on the back end?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's say, for example, like we actually have an individual in A2FL, and he's he's making about a few $100,000 a month, and he has a podcast. And on the back end, he helps people with their podcast. So he does it done for you. He has a coaching offer as well. He helps beginners that want to get started with podcasts. So he kind of has this monetization framework on the back end. So let's say you were to do something like that and you wanted to make, let's say, $300,000 a month from back end offers. It wouldn't make sense for you to promote on here. It would make sense for you to have a business channel where you talk about the business of being in the podcast game. And you're like, okay, well, listen, I've had all these guest speakers on. It's done X, Y, Z for my life. But your audience here, probably a very small fraction of them actually care about or have any desire at all to get into the podcasting game. And that's where you would basically like silo and have a second channel to talk about that.
It's something I've definitely considered. And it actually started as a means to an end of doing high ticket coaching for blowing up people on social media. And I realized how hard that was with like going viral on social media does not mean you get business owners who can pay you $100,000 a month to make them viral on social media. They're actually inversely correlated. But out of the spirit of this being too niche, let's maybe go a bit broader here. Let's do, this is a segment called This or That. You choose one of the two things. You don't have to say why, but you can if you want. Monk mode or networking?
For most people watching this, monk mode.
Personal brand or AI?
Personal brand.
Info or agency?
Info.
US or Dubai?
Oh man, this is so tough. I hate saying personal things that don't apply to other people. For me, Dubai.
Real estate or crypto?
For me, real estate.
Private jet or private chef?
Private chef.
Rolex or AP?
Great relationships with all of them. They're all great.
I'll let you have a buy on that one. Mercedes or Rolls Royce?
Rolls Royce.
100 million followers or $100 million?
$100 million.
Books or mentors?
It's so tough because, as I said, like for most people, books, but as you get further along, mentors are more valuable. Like I get more from mentors now than I get from books.
Discipline or passion?
Discipline.
What would you do with your time if money was no object?
Well, I'll be honest, money isn't an object, so I would just do what I'm doing right now. I would just do what I'm doing right now. Honestly, like for me, I think sometimes in life people think they need like to save the world or change the world or all these things. Like now it's actually funny because I genuinely feel like what I'm doing right now with, specifically, with WAP is like we are actually reforming the education system. Like I had that in my Instagram bio in 2017. I don't know how I was going to do it. I don't know what that would look like, but I genuinely believe that online education and the fact that more and more people are finally starting to realize like the traditional education systems are bloated, they're outdated. I don't want to there's so much messaging around that. Like I don't want to kind of, kick a horse when it's down. Like it's like, I think we all kind of get it, right?
College sucks.
Yeah, it's just not what it used to be. And as I said, I don't want to be like one of those people, just talking shit about that. The point is, okay, let's now look forward and let's look what the alternative options are. And I just love the fact that like now everyone understands that online, you can go online and you can, have this breadth of mentors and you have this breadth of people in your corner that can guide you to wherever it is that you want to go. So yeah, I feel like we've talked about that enough, but the reason I bring that up is like, for me, that's something that's genuinely meaningful. But even if I was working on something that isn't meaningful, I'll give you an example, like my eyewear brand. Like I don't like sunglasses. Like growing up, I didn't like sunglasses. And until I had my eyewear brand, I didn't wear sunglasses. I only wear my eyewear brand. I wear religiously. I refuse to wear any other eyewear brand on earth because I just make stuff that I like. And if you told me 10 years ago, like this year, especially in the e-com space and nothing crazy, but like we'll do 8 figures this year. If you told me that 10 years ago, like you would sell 40%, I sold 40% of the business back in May to my business partner, who's a strategic as well, because he's done $1 billion in eyewear. So it's like a pretty good business partner I have. If you told me 10 years ago that I would be in this industry, I'd be like, wow, I never wear sunglasses. But now I find so much meaning and I find so much enjoyment from like building the product with the team. And I get so excited when I get like new samples in and it's like the detailing is exactly how I want it. And like, I'm, geek out about packaging and like all of this stuff. And like, I find meaning, like even in the eyewear industry, I genuinely like get so worked up when I talk about like our target market, which is like our eyewear is anywhere from $95 to $120. And I like get so worked up when I'm like, right now you have this monopoly in eyewear where you either get like shitty $30 frames or even like Ray-Bans are like $250 now. Like it's insane. And I'm like, there's no like reasonable, I never want to use the word affordable because honestly, if you hold the glass in hand, the only thing it's comparable to is like Jacques Marie-Mage or Chrome Hearts. Like it's insane. And so I hate using that word, but like the truth of the matter is it's incredible product at an incredible price point. And it makes, you talked about, what makes you feel confident. Like that's something I wear, I feel confident. And I know that's had that effect on so many people because it's kind of an extension of your face. It's different, whatever. Maybe you got a nice jacket on, but it's for that day. Like this is like, becomes a part of someone's personality in a way. So to tie this whole thing together, that's something where I find meaning in the work, but I feel like even if I was in whatever, like it could be any industry, I'd be able to find meaning in it. Because for me, I just find meaning in like, am I working with people I love working with? And am I also just coming into industry and just, can we make the product better? And if I can do those things, I don't actually really care what I work on. Like I could be making sockets for all I care. As long as I do it with like people I love working with, and I feel like we're actually doing something to move the industry forward a little bit, like I'm happy.
So you kind of see yourself as an inventor, like you like to build cool shit. I guess why do you find enjoyment in that? Is that always been the case with you?
Well, I just think people of character, I really respect. For example, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's this documentary called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And it's about this like little omakase restaurant in this Japanese subway. And this guy's like booked out for months and months and he could like move into like this super grand or franchise and, turn it into a Nobu or this, that. But like all he's done for like 60, 70 years is just obsess over finding the freshest fish and preparing the sushi in the right way. That's all he does. And like, I love stuff like that where someone commits to a craft or finds meaning in something that maybe to us we seem small, but to him that's like his entire life. And I say even with like the team, if we got into like, let's say we started selling knives, like I'm not gonna sit here and say that our life's mission is we're gonna change the world. Because I also think like when your company's mission is like so far away from reality, like it's actually a demotivator. It's like, guys, what we're saying we're doing here is just like we're just lying to ourselves. But if I got into a knife making business, I would make it my mission that you never ever cook again without a smile on your face. Now you're never gonna achieve that mission because of course you could have just been broken up with. Let's say you make the best knives in the world and you're cooking, you're gonna be fucking miserable. So it's not an attainable mission, but it's something that's still rooted in reality, and people understand that like we're trying to put a smile on our customer's face. We're not always gonna accomplish that goal, but the closer that we can get there, the better it is. And I just feel like when you can find meaning in these things that maybe for other people don't seem like big deal, but for you, if you get a group of people together and you're all aligned on the same thing and to you make it meaningful, instead in the same way, like if you hear me talk about like eyewear, like I actually get like worked up about it. I'm like, the fact that someone can step out the house and they don't have to spend fucking $500 on all these other brands, and they step out of the house and I know that extra feeling of like confidence it gives them, and then it's like now part of their personality. It's like, yeah, I just find a lot of meaning in this stuff. And just to backtrack, I wouldn't call myself an inventor at all. For example, even in my eyewear business, Alex Hawkers, who's my business partner, I give him 100% full credit when it comes to products. He's a wizard, a genius there. Once again, same thing with WAP. Like these guys are one of the best product companies in the world. The engineering team gets 150% of all the credit. But I'm very good at coming in and steering the ship and saying, okay, this is what we should focus on, or we should, put more attention here. And and make a little difference in that way.
I like what you said. I think that is the one piece of advice in this interview that could apply to everyone. Just do what you do as good as humanly possible. But I do have to ask that if that is your framework for choosing how you live your life, then why have you done it at such scale? You know, because you could have perhaps been a chef or been a teacher at a school and just done that thing as good as Iman can do. But why go past that?
I think for me, it's the story and the people I do it with, and the opportunities. Like, I can come into multiple different companies, different businesses I own, or I'm a significant a stakeholder in, and I know I'm creating opportunities for everyone within that organization. So I just think I genuinely do feel like I wake up every morning, I'm in service to the people around me, and I also just like, I hate like very like. I feel like that's very look at me, like I'm holy. I don't like holier than thou things. So I'm really not trying to say in a holier than thou. I feel in service every day, but like I think everyone has a different way they give love and feel love. The way that I show people I love them or I care about them is like being useful and like let me help you, or like let me create opportunity for you, or like let me make sure that you're safe. So I think that's kind of like the way I show love to the people around me, and also like kind of almost in a way like love to the world is like, let me be that container to create opportunity for people.
Let me be as helpful as possible in the way that I know how. That makes sense. But I like the framework of not wanting to change the world, because not just one person can change the world. And there's a lot of stuff that could just be better, What were you saying?
And I think that's like, I wish people didn't discredit themselves. Like, I feel like when you say, oh, we need to change the world, it's almost discrediting the fact that like, yeah, but you changed your industry, or like you made things better in your industry. And like, rather than trying to change the world, can you just come in and just find your little, can you find your little carving of land and just make that like as prosperous as humanly possible? And that's realistic. And if you do that, like, in my opinion, that's how you change the world.
What does it mean to be a gentleman?
It means different thing in different countries and different cultures, to be honest. I'm in this funny place where Dagestan is close. Like, Iman means faith in Arabic. So like, I'm like kind of between the Middle East and Russia. So obviously it's a very like traditional kind of place. Being a gentleman to me, I just think it means being considerate and putting others before yourself.
I guess specifically in relationships with a woman.
Same thing, being considerate, putting them before you, but also like, I think being gentleman also means having a backbone, because I think sometimes people take it too far in the sense of like, I'm a gentleman, so I'm going to do everything and bend over backwards and let this person tread on me. And to me, that's not like a real man. Like, a real man needs to have boundaries. I don't trust people that say yes to everything. I don't trust people that don't have boundaries. To me, usually those are the most dangerous people. Because when they lash hard. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, do you want more specific examples?
Yeah, I guess to go more specific, like, what are some things maybe men don't consider in a relationship with a girl, where they might think it's cheesy, but you're a proponent of it?
I think it all comes to where you go geographically. I guess the way I was raised is how you come to a date and how you go home from a date, or things that... from what I understand in America, maybe sometimes can be a bit of an afterthought. Also depends where in the country you are. Like for me, you pick up a girl. If, there's certain instances I might be stuck in a meeting, you arrange transportation, you drop a girl home. Those are, to me, just given things. Maybe this might be a little provocative, but just where I'm from in the world, like, splitting the bill is not a thing. Once again, the way I was raised, no judgments for people that want to live otherwise. I mean, I don't know. For me, it's just very small things.
Should you ever try to win someone back in a relationship?
Why did they leave? Sometimes you fucked up. So that's the like, listen, if they left because they just, quite frankly, don't want you anymore, or they don't feel like you're the person for them, I don't think you ever chase them. But if there are situations, and this is usually much rare cases where you're the one that pushed them away, that's the only time I would ever say, yeah, potentially win them back. But those are anomalies.
Have you ever tried to get a girl back that you ended a relationship with?
I wouldn't say tried to,
She came back?
yeah, no, I also, she came back. I also don't, I feel like that almost makes it sound a little disrespectful. We came back together, you know? Yeah, that's happened to me in the past.
Do you plan on having kids?
100%.
Do you want a lot of kids?
Do I want a lot of kids?
Yeah.
Me personally, no.
No.
2, 3.
Is there a certain framework for that? Or
horrible example, but I think people will get the point. Like, it's like having multiple businesses. Listen, the more businesses you have, the less love and attention you can give it. So like to give it 100% of your undivided attention to grow in the way it needs to grow and flourish in the way it needs to flourish. I think, yeah, of course, the more you divide your attention, the harder it becomes. So, you know, that's my stance on it.
Do you kind of disagree with the, it's kind of a new statement that's popped up that men don't really need to be involved in the child's upbringing that much. It's really the mother's responsibility, and the men should just check in sometimes, but they should still be focused on their mission. Like, how do you kind of view that?
Funnily enough, I actually do agree with that. And I think but I think it changes. So I also want to preface something by saying, I don't have kids. So if you want like a good answer, maybe go ask someone that successfully raised kids. Like, cause I also want to make that clear, because sometimes you get asked questions in podcasts and it's like, this is theoretically my viewpoint, but I haven't lived it. So, you know, maybe go ask someone that's raised a bunch of kids and they'll probably give you a better answer. This is just the way that I view the world. I think really up until a kid is about like 8 or 9 years old, you're not as impactful as a man. Like, the woman is far more important in loving, nurturing. That's not to say that you listen to me, you shouldn't be absent. It just means being around 24/7. I feel like if that's something you want to do, that's great, but that's more for you. That's more selfishly for you. I don't think that's like I can't remember a single lesson I was taught when I was 3 or 4 years old, quite frankly. But once your kids go past the age of like 8, 9, 10, I feel like as a man, that's really when you're very impactful to like impart life lessons, teach skills, and that's where you become that's where as a man, it's more important that you're present than the woman, in my opinion.
I'll get back to the parenting in a bit, but on relationships, what's the most attractive thing a woman can wear? Once again, I guess each their own. I like stuff that's more modest. Yeah, just smart casual. Smart casual. Define smart casual.
For me, I like it when a girl knows she has it, but she doesn't need to show it off. Like because you can always, it just makes it far more attractive. I'm just not very like into revealing everything to the world. You know what I mean? But that's not even just in terms of like your body and your looks. That's also just like as a person. Like I actually don't super connect with people. This is a podcast, so of course it's slightly different. But when I meet people at first, a lot of times I'm very polite, I'm very respectful, but I'm not going to fucking tell you my entire life story. I'm not going to, like, you don't deserve that. Like, and I don't like people that I meet them and they tell me everything about them straight away. I don't trust those people. I'm like, why are you telling me? Why do I get to know intimate parts of your life? Like, I should have to earn that right. So maybe that's like the Russian in me. Like, Russian people are very cold, you know, when you first get to know them. But, you know, once they trust you, they're like the most loving, sweet people on earth. So yeah, all that to say that I kind of view it the same way when it comes to attire. Like I don't, listen, I'm also not, I get it. Everyone comes from different cultures and whatnot. Like I'm not saying, you know, you need to be fully covered all the time. That's also, funnily enough, not the way that I was raised. It's just, it's a happy medium between the two.
So I'm guessing you kind of like European fashion, New York fashion, as opposed to something like Miami or Los Angeles, where it can be a bit more
pretty
revealing. Much. Got it. It's a really thoughtful answer. What does real love look like? Do you think the media portrays it accurately?
No, not at all. I think the media like absolutely sets people up for disaster because they think like real love is fireworks 24/7 and real love is, for me, real love. Once again, I want to preface this by saying I'm not married. So, you know, maybe go speak to someone that's been happily married for 30 years. This has just been my experience of it. when I know that like genuinely deeply I truly love someone, is there's no, not to say that there's never fireworks, but even when there's no fireworks, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care that this doesn't look like some New York rom-com 24/7 and we look like we're in a movie. I'm like, and I don't care if, you know, maybe listen, when you've been with a person for a long time, and I've been in, you know, a long relationship, and I've experienced that. There's days you wake up and maybe you're not, so you don't want to rip that person's clothes off, but like you still wouldn't look anywhere else. Like that's still your person. You know what I mean? So that's my experience of love, which is, or that's the way that I view real love, which is like, maybe it's not fireworks and want to rip each other's clothes off 24/7 like the media portrays it. And it's a shame because the way the media portrays it is like, if you're not feeling that anymore, it's like, oh, the spark's gone. Like you should just give up and move on. And it's like, what you're describing to people is a feeling of, it's like drugs. It's like, that's why when people tell me about their relationships that are 6 months or even like a year and a half, I'm like, I don't mean to be patronizing, but like, that's cute. Like that's cute that like, you're so deeply in love and it's been a year, but like, talk to me when it's been 5. Like talk to me when it's been 5 and you still have more appreciation for this person in year 5 than year 1. Like when, you know, sometimes even like female friends of mine are like, oh, he did this for me, he did that. I'm like, that's cool. Like he wants to have sex with you. Like talk to me what things are going to be like after 3 years, after he's gotten everything that he's wanted and he has nothing to benefit more from you. How is he showing up in year 3? Because for me, real love is like when you show up more in year 3 or year 5 or year 10 or year 20 than you do in year 1. So yeah, that's the way I view these things.
Is it hard to find someone you would date long-term, perhaps marry, have kids with your level of success status at your age?
I've had a bunch of people ask me this. No. I'll be honest, sometimes I hear guys and they talk to me and they're like, you know, all I meet is, you know, they use the word hoes, you know, all I meet is these women and these blah, blah. And I'm like, bro, where are you looking? Because like, I've only ever like interacted with great women. Like, listen, of course, you meet people here and there. I'm not saying that I've had the perfect women around me my entire life, but I'm saying like people that I've had genuine, like more serious things with. I've never had a girl be late, be disrespectful, shout, nothing. And I think it's because like the way that I carry myself and the energy that I have is, I'm going to be very polite. I'm going to be very respectful, but don't get it twisted. I have boundaries. And by the way, I expect you to have boundaries as well. But like, if I encroach on those boundaries, there should be repercussions. If you encroach on my boundaries, there will be repercussions. And I think that's healthy. So yeah, I don't know, when sometimes I hear from guys that like, can't meet any good women, this, that. I'm like, bro, maybe that's a fucking you problem. Because yes, for sure, don't get twisted. I've met a bunch of women that I would, for me personally, they're not my people, and I would never consider dating them. And sometimes actually it's crazy. I talk about this with my boys. I look at the amount of the backflips that some guys will do for certain girls, and I'm like, I get it. They're attractive, but I'm just like, I couldn't, once again, maybe this is me, this is not my person, but like, I'm like, I couldn't spend a day with this person. Like there's nothing of substance there. So once again, maybe it's not my person, maybe, you know, there's someone else's person, but yeah, I don't think it's as bleak as most people make it out to be. I just think they're looking in the wrong places, quite frankly, or I think maybe they're attracting, a lot of times people think they want something, but they want something else. Like if you want to hoe around, I'm speaking as like a guy here. Like if you want to be a guy and you want to hoe around, like just fucking own it. But don't sit here and pretend like you want wifey when like your actions aren't like, I don't get these guys. They're like going to the clubs and then they're like, all these girls are hoes. And it's like, bro, what? Nothing good happens past 2 o'clock in the morning. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with going to clubs every once in a while, you know. Maybe, you know, twice a year you might find me in a club, you know, if I'm just getting a shit face with my friends. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, if I wanted a good strategy to find my wifey, I'm probably not going to be hanging out in the clubs until like 4 or 5 every morning in these major cities, but then like getting pissed off that I can't find a good woman. Like, it's just like, you know, once you make your bed, lay in it. And don't flip-flop. Don't say you want one thing, but then all of your actions reflect another way. If you want to hoe around, as a man, I'm saying, go for it. Enjoy it. But then don't get pissed off when like you get exactly the thing that you wanted.
It seems like the methodology men use to find women is somewhat lazy if they have that experience, because it's like, oh, I only date women that I message on Instagram, or they message me on Instagram, or like you said, went to the club and met them there, or at a party in college, but they're not really putting in effort to find a girl who I guess is in an environment in which they would like her to be commonly, like perhaps library or coffee shop, just something normal. Like if you want a girl that doesn't go out, don't meet the girl at the club, like you're saying. One of the pieces of advice I thought was particularly interesting, or your opinion, I should say, when researching this, was you said men shouldn't look at a woman twice unless they plan on approaching them. I thought that was really good.
3 times.
3 times?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think like, for, you know, as like a guy, you always do like a double take. Like, you know, maybe you see someone, you're like, oh, wow, that's, you know, she's very attractive. You can look again, but I think at that point, once you recognize, okay, cool, this is a person that I would like to speak to, make your decision. Now, bear in mind, some days, like no matter how good you are as a guy, like no matter how confident, some days you're just not feeling it. So that's not to say that like every single time you're going to go up to this person. Sometimes you're just like, you're feeling like shit that day. You're not feeling confident. You're like, you know, you're in your head, and that's fine. But don't like now try to like, I fuck this person for the next like hour and then just not talk to them. Like, make your decision. Are you going to make your move, or you're not going to make your move? And I think that's what I was trying to get across there. It's like, make the decision there. Am I going to do this, or am I not going to do this? And by the way, if you're not going to do it, it's fine. Because I said, we're not always like Mr. Confident and Mr. Approachable, but make your decision.
Yeah, and I guess the bad side of like staring at a woman, if you're not going to approach them, is you're kind of giving yourself this dopamine hit, almost like you did go and talk to her, or almost like you were dating her. But by not acting on it, you're kind of cutting yourself short of not actually doing the thing.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, it also puts them on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Because you're like, there's so much like energetic disconnect where you're like, I'm scared to talk to you and blah, blah, this, that. So like the less you can do that, when the time comes and you're like, I do want to approach this person, I think you make it less of a big deal.
In my experience, a lot of guys that work in marketing or product aren't very good at approaching women, or they're a bit scared. This is not everyone, but particularly salesmen are really good at it because they're used to knocking doors, making calls. Like, where did you kind of build this habit of not being afraid to approach girls?
I think it's not even a girls thing. I think it's a people thing. And I think it's, I don't know, I've been uploading on YouTube for 10 years now, you know, and I guess I've just become so aware of the fact that, first of all, people don't care about you anywhere near as much as you think they do. Like, you know, people are like embarrassed maybe if I go up and she doesn't want to talk to me. Bro, people don't give a shit. Like, no one's going to talk about it. No one's losing sleep over it. That's number one. And number two, I also understand, like, let's say, for example, you're trying to close a client, or let's say, for example, you're going up to a girl and, you know, it doesn't go the way you want. That is also, it's not 100% a reflection of you. Like, maybe that person, maybe that client is going through financial issues. Like, if they could, they would buy it, your services, your product, or whatever. Maybe that female has just gone through a brutal breakup 4 days ago. Like, her heart is open to no one or nothing. So I just, once again, I don't put it on such a big pedestal, and I don't make it a big deal. So that's where it kind of takes the pressure off of things.
What advice would you give to young women trying to find a husband?
That's something we do talk about quite often, actually. It kind of does break my heart, because I feel like there's not too much great advice for women. And it makes me quite sad. Like, yeah, we were having this conversation the other day. I see all this stuff out there, like women will be like, oh, you know, run if he doesn't make at least 100K a year. Or women will be like, oh, if he's not getting you a Birkin or a this or that. And it's just like, it breaks my heart because it's, if you meet a man in like his early days as he's like coming up and you give him your everything, like that's been the longest relationship and the happiest relationships and the most like firm relationships I've seen ever, is like when a woman meets you as you're building and she gives you that trust and that faith. Like, I think as a man, that bond is stronger than like anything else in the world. And it's all, I guess I would say to women is just, if he doesn't get you a Birkin, that's fine. Like that's fine. If he doesn't make 100K a year, once again, that's fine. If you think if he checks off all your boxes, like I get quite, it's this weird thing where I almost have like survivor's guilt, because in this whole social media, money, notoriety, this, that, like it's weird because I'm at the top of this pyramid of like, you know, being young, relatively successful, you know, relatively well known, and I'm a beneficiary from this entire system, this construct that the world's had of like a man who does well financially and is desired by a bunch of, like I'm the one of the top beneficiaries of this whole thing. But I like walk around and it like breaks my heart. And when I see this messaging around there of like, you know, if he doesn't make 100K run, or if he, you know, if he doesn't have a black card, blah, blah, this, that. And it's just like, what fucking world are we living in where you're like shaming someone for that? Or I even see stuff out there as, you know, there'll be content like, you know, why are you crying? He's broke. And I'm like, imagine if men were like, why are you crying? She's fat. It's like, why are you shaming like a man for, because first of all, going back to how we actually started this whole conversation, being successful in life is also a time thing. Like you could give 110%, you could be doing everything right, but you still have to wait. Like time still has to catch up to all that effort you're putting in. So like as a man, I just find it like a little upsetting that these men, like young men, are being called, oh, you're broke, or you're a brokey, or you're of this, that. And it's like, this guy's fucking doing 110% of everything he could do. And you're sat here fucking mocking him when in 10 years, this person will be so fucking far ahead of you because he's putting in the groundwork. He's doing everything he needs to do. But yeah, you're going to sit here and like put this fucking person down when like, I don't know. It's just like, honestly, genuinely, it makes me so upset.
Yeah. It seems as though people often don't understand the math either of how many guys are like an Iman Gadzhi, you know? It's
100%.
like, I've only met 4 that are similar net worth, but they don't have any status. You know, it's few and far between. And even like the amount of guys that make $1 million below the age of 30, very,
Bro,
very
even
small.
100K.
Yeah.
Like, but people are so like dilute. Like, what was the stat? Because we were talking about this.
It was, I think, 38% of families in the US, households, bring in 100K. But that's households. And then when you break it down to individuals, it's less than 20%. And when you break it down to after tax, it's less than 1%. So if you're bringing in 100K post-tax in America, you're on the top 1%.
And then that's not even factoring in age.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and then you look at like people under 30s, and the other thing is there's certain careers where I actually had this conversation with one person because like her husband had gotten her a car, and it wasn't like the car that she wanted, and this car was like fucking 50 grand. And I'm like, and this guy's 30 and he makes a few $100,000 a year, 300,000-400,000 a year. And they were like, you know, it's not enough. And I was like, yes, but this person works for fucking Goldman. Like, yeah, maybe he's 30 now making 400 grand a year, but he's gonna be like 40 in 10 years, he's gonna be making like $2.7 million a year. And then like 10 years on from that, if he keeps going in the same trajectory, like, so, you know, a lot of people are just very like short-sighted, and they just see like, what is the person today? And unfortunately, they don't see the future potential. And I do also get it, like women have a lot of trauma around, okay, I poured into this man and then he left me. Or I poured into this man and then, you know, when he did make something of himself, you know, he forgot about. So I get it. It's like, it's tough on both sides, but like the one thing that I just think needs to fucking stop right now is like shaming men who are trying. It's like, yeah, if he doesn't get you a Birkin run, it's just like, shut the fuck up. Like, what world are we living in? It's insane. You know, like, it's like, once again, it's like men saying like, oh, if she's not a Victoria's Secret model, run. It's like, what? Like, we all realize that that's ridiculous. But yeah, with the men example, it's, yeah, and it's I don't know. It's, as I said, coming as someone who's like one of the top beneficiaries of this whole system, I'm like, I look at it, I genuinely am heartbroken for men, like genuinely heartbroken.
I think the other side of it is that men who are winning, this is something you preach, should stay loyal to that girl who was there.
100%.
I don't think that's often done enough either, but okay. Last question on relationships. Why has porn ruined young men?
I think it goes back to false sense of expectations. Like they have these, it's kind of in like a much darker way. It's almost like the same thing with like movies. Like it's like, you think it's constant fireworks and this and that. And like you have this false expectation of what it is in reality. And then like men now, it has to be such an unrealistic image for men to get aroused or interested when it's like the female body is so beautiful in of itself. But then now all they see is like these caricatures. So I think that's number one. Number two, you know, on the scale of, I forget what's a technical term for it, but basically on the scale of emotions, one of the lowest emotions you can feel is shame, levels of consciousness. And porn brings usually among with it shame. So now you've got all these men walking around in shame, and it's hard to live an inspired life and take action in the world when you're constantly living in shame. You know, guilt and shame are two different things. Shame is a lot worse than guilt. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is fundamentally I'm wrong as a person. Like fundamentally there's something wrong with me. Like, and that's a very rough negative emotion, because fundamentally you don't think you're enough. Fundamentally you don't think you're good enough. Fundamentally you think there's something wrong with you, and that's not a good way to be walking around in life.
What's something that happened to you that you believe was unfair?
I know it's like a delusional answer, but nothing. Like this is God's honest truth. I just don't view anything that's happened in my life as unfair, because there's people who've had it far more unfair. And then you start getting into this, like, sometimes it annoys me because people will be like, you know, how can you be having a bad day when there's kids dying in Africa? And I'm just like, come on, man. Like, everyone's problems are real to them. And I see it now in the, actually, that was probably one of the most interesting things growing up, is I would see my mom, who was like miserable with no money, but then I would see like friends' parents who are wealthy, miserable with money. And I'm like, you guys are living the same level of consciousness. Like, you guys are living the same life, even though the external might be slightly, is different. The internal is the exact same. So yeah, I just don't look at anything in my life as that's unfair, because it's just, I view it as, it served me and it helped me.
I guess another way of asking, is there anything in your life that you struggle to let go of?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch. Like, for example, I think my sense of self-worth comes from being useful, because that's how I got my sense of self-worth growing up, is like being useful. And I think that's definitely something I struggle to let go with. But I also don't know if I want to let go of that, or I don't know if it's noble to be like, oh, you have to let go of that trauma, and you have to let go of the fact that you're not, you get sense of self-worth by being useful to the people around you. It's like, I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty like noble thing, or I feel like I'm happy with that's my reality.
On a lighter note, what's your favorite rap lyric?
Drake, when he says more blessings because I'm generous.
Do you believe in that?
Yes, because I think back in my life, and honestly, no, listen, I'm sure there's some individuals I've had, smaller interactions with, and it was skewed the other way, but I can pretty confidently say, hand on heart, 99% of interactions, I give more than I take. And the other person gets far more out of it, the relationship and interaction, than I get out of it. But then when I think from a macro perspective, I'm the one that's done the best. And I think about that because people want to continue doing business with me. People want to continue being associated to me. Like even the fact that I've had someone work for me for 8 years. And, he started working for me in 2017. Like the fact that I've been able to keep talent around for that long, it's because I understand how to make it win-win. I understand how to set up win-win situations. So yeah, I do think as long as you're not a pushover, and that's the main thing I want to make clear, like there's people that just are pushovers. And I think that not knowing how to have boundaries is also like a negative thing. And I don't think you're serving the other person. So in general, I do believe that, the more you give, the more you give, the more you get.
What's something you wish your dad taught you?
My real dad or my stepdad?
I guess your biological dad. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It's tough when you're so happy with the outcome because you just don't want to, kind of like butterfly effect. Like you don't, there's nothing you wish you would have changed because you're just so happy with the way things turned out. I will say there are some things like when I see my friends and they know how to, like, for example, like I don't know how to change a tire, and like my friends' dads taught them that, or like, I didn't know how to fish, and like my friends' dads taught them that. So there's these things that like sometimes I do have moments where I'm kind of reminded like, oh fuck, like that's kind of the stuff that a dad teaches you, and I didn't have that.
What's one thing your mother taught you?
A lot. Honestly, probably the biggest thing she taught me is that you don't always deserve a round of applause for the things you should do. Like she never wanted a fucking standing ovation for being a mother. Like it's funny. I've had moments where I've like been like, thank you so much for everything you did for me growing up, blah, blah. And like, I remember one time, this is actually after I bought her her dream house. She told me to shut up. I was like, so what's like having a Russian mom, fiery Russian mom. And I was like kind of taken aback, and I was like, did I say something wrong? She's like, don't ever thank me for something that I was meant to do. She's like, I'm a mother. Like, why? Like, you don't need to say thank you. Like, I did what I had to do. We don't need to talk about this anymore. And, like part of me really appreciates that, because I think a lot of times people, not to say that you shouldn't appreciate people around you, but like, I don't need constant praise or constant thank yous from people around me. Of course, everyone around me is so sweet and they do those things either way, but I don't think I'm just doing what I need to do. And these are my obligations and these are my duties, and I made this bed, I chose this life. So I don't need constant like praise or validation from the people around me. It's like, yeah, I think that's honestly the biggest thing.
I'd found this story in the research. There's a story about your mother breaking her bone. It was your biological father. He pushed her out of a car, I believe. What was the story there?
Well, this is another thing where like still to this day, my mom, she's a very interesting character. Like she will tell me stories of parts of my upbringing or her upbringing, and like, yeah, my biological father, like they had an argument in the car, opened the door, pushed her out, and whatever, she broke a couple bones. But like the way she says it is like, you think she's like talking about like the weather or something. Like there's zero emotion, zero. And listen, I'm sure we could psychoanalyze that, and I'm sure there's some trauma there and this and that, and but whatever. That's just my mom. She just it was something she actually told me maybe only a couple years ago. When we were having lunch, and it's just another one of those examples where, I don't know, she never makes a big deal of what she's been through. She's just like,
Do you think she doesn't view it as trauma?
I don't think so.
She views it as maybe just something that happened?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think she views it as trauma at all.
It's really interesting.
Sorry, just to close that loop. It's weird because anything regarding my biological father, so my biological father, like, he was an alcoholic abusive. So this stuff would only happen when he was drunk. Apparently, when he was sober, he was a fucking angel and like the best person ever. And it's weird when I talk to her about it. I think the main thing is the fact that she's like, I don't care about all this stuff because I have you. Like, I think that's the thing that kind of helps her come to terms with all this stuff. She's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, you came out of this, you know, all of this, like, without, you know, your father. And also, like, I know where my dad is. Like, I know where my dad is. Like, my mom and my dad still speak, you know, maybe once a year or something like that. Like, if I wanted to go see him, you know, next week, I could do it. It's just, for me, you know, if you're not around in the hard times, I don't know if, for me, it's just, you don't get to benefit from the good times. And it's not like I feel no anger or no malice or no like fuck you energy or anything like that. It's just like, you know, unfortunately, if you never helped out when times were bad, you know, you can't just all of a sudden walk in, no hard feelings, nothing like that. Just, you know, that's the way I view the world. So,
when's the last time you spoke to him?
Well, this is a funny story. It was when I've only ever met him once when I was 8 or 9. Man, this is so fucking like, you can't make this shit up. I met him once and he promised me the next day he would come and take me to a water park, and he never showed up. I was like, fuck, you gotta be kidding me. So yeah, that was the one time when I was 8 or 9.
Did he tell you like he was your dad, or what was, do you have?
No, my mom obviously told me.
Gotcha. And were you guys under the assumption that he was like gonna come back in your life at that time?
No.
Just like, I'm gonna take you to a water park.
Yeah, we met one day and he was like, okay, cool. I gotta go. Tomorrow I'll take you to a water park. Yeah, it did.
You know, I had a question about how I noticed a pattern among hyper successful guys that grew up without father figures or with their dad not super present, that they strive, but kind of never let that fire burn out. I don't really think it's applicable to you based on having this interview, but do you ever catch yourself chasing something that feels bigger than money, even if you can't fully describe it yet?
I think you're asking me if I feel like I'm enough or something in that realm.
I guess a lot of people want to kind of do it for a parent that wasn't there. I don't think that's the case with you. But do you think there's any other reason that
no part of me is like, oh, you know, I want to prove my dad wrong or this. Like, absolutely zero part of me.
Do you want to prove your mom right?
I already proved my mom right, and also, quite frankly, she doesn't give a shit. Like, that's the other thing. My mom is like, my mom is the one, you know, we talk about how like raise voice, like, you know, be like almost like a bit rude. Like, my mom's the one woman in my life who like, she shouts at me and I just sit there and I listen, you know, and I like, my mom is, yeah, she's, and all that to say, like, she could not give less of a shit about like, of course she's proud and she's this, that, but like, moms are moms, you know, at the end of the day, like, no matter what net worth I reach or what figure I cross, she's like, you're too skinny, you haven't eaten enough today. Like, that's just like what Russian moms are like, you know what I mean? So it's, I no part of me does it for, at this stage, no part of me does it because I want to make her more proud. Like, I know she's proud no matter what.
What I forgot. Have you ever been close to taking your life?
Yeah, actually, there was a point in 2022 and I thought it would never happen to me. I'll be honest, I didn't believe in, I guess that's a whole nother can of worms. Like I just never thought, okay, I could get depressed. I could get this, be in that mental headspace. And, you know, I was 22, very, very successful already, you know, years into business, still had everything that anyone could ever want. And yeah, I had a very difficult 6-month window where it wasn't, am I going to do it? It was, how am I going to do it? And once you start thinking about that, that's where, you know, you're not in the best place because, yeah, now you're really thinking about the next steps. And yeah, a lot of that was linked to an autoimmune condition that I was going through. And there was a lot of things that I had to remove from my life because I was in such a fragile place, and I kind of had to like almost go back to like treating myself like a kid. And even down to like music, like there was in that window, I couldn't listen to music. It was too intense. Like anything that could kind of penetrate my psyche, I had to push away. So obviously, you know, no alcohol, even caffeine, like no caffeine. There's like, I was as like fragile as could be. And I was in my most fragile state I've ever been. And yeah, I just had to like kind of pick myself up and be very patient with myself, but be patient and understanding with myself without being a victim. Because sometimes people are patient with themselves, but they victimize themselves. I was like, listen, I'm not a fucking victim here. I'm going through it. I'll get myself out of it. But right now, anything that is too stimulating, I have to keep away from me. And I have to just be myself and no external influences.
It's one of the better pieces of advice that I've gotten is like when you grow up, you have to learn how to parent yourself. Tell me about the autoimmune disease, if you don't mind. What kind of situation do you have?
Yeah, so I had really bad psoriasis. Now, psoriasis is, for a lot of people, maybe they experience it, but I mean, bro, to the point, it was like my entire body was like scales. And if it gets bad enough, it gets to a point where it turns into like psoriatic arthritis, where like, yeah, now, you're wheelchair bound and you lose your mobility. So I don't know what particularly caused it. I had some assumptions, but long story short, I had to clear it. And it's horrible, bro, because you're like, your entire arms are fully like flesh red. Everything is like, and it's because autoimmune conditions really they have different ways they materialize and different ways they appear. There's some autoimmune conditions where someone could be going through it, you have no idea. Whereas like this is a very like visible thing, and especially for someone that like, I've been used to uploading on YouTube, it was something, interesting to go through. And yeah, I remember going to all the best doctors in the world, because at that point, I was doing well for myself financially, and they were all like, we'll be with you for the rest of your life, this, that, and I've always had a disdain for medical system and doctors and this and that. And I was like, fuck you, no way. And I went and I studied and ended up doing a carnivore diet. So meat only. I think for 6 weeks, all I ate was beef, salt, water. That was it. Beef, salt, water. Then I started introducing foods in. I started learning, okay, what does my body agree with? What does it not agree with? Then I started doing just general carnivore. In that period, just removed, obviously, no alcohol, no caffeine, nothing that could just stimulate my system. And they call your gut your second brain. And I believe that. Like I cleared the autoimmune condition, and then all the depression stuff, all the suicidal thoughts really went away. And it's been ever since then. I will say I live in Dubai. It's my personal belief, if you live somewhere sunny, like 95% of physical ailments go away. Like I can do basically whatever I want right now. And I know I'm very like fortunate and blessed. Like I can eat whatever, drink whatever, this, that. And it doesn't really ever come back, maybe small flare-ups once a year, something like that. But that's because I'm always getting sunlight.
Where were you living when that happened to you?
UK. And
you're Dagestani originally,
yeah,
right? And so you probably get darker than you are now, like more tan.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm from, in the summers, it goes up to like 40 degrees Celsius. Like it gets super hot, but then in the winters it gets super cold.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of both.
Yeah, so the UK probably had a big impact on you. I think that's a whole other issue in of itself is the whole issues with the UK is probably caused by immigrants coming from countries where they might have more melanin and they have the lack of sunlight. But it's interesting you say that. My mentor, he had an autoimmune and almost died, and he went carnivore and it saved his life completely. He was like bedbound. He's on salt, beef, water, and I think he does butter now. But yeah. Have you added all things back in, or have you added?
Yeah, now I mean this is like 4.5 years ago at this point.
So you don't have bad flare-ups?
No. But once again, it's because if I lived in like, let's say New York all year round or London all year round, it would be an issue. But simply because like I'm very incredibly blessed and fortunate. Like I literally live on the beach. Like my house is on the beach.
Are you on the Palm?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So like for me to wake up and be in the beach water, it takes about like 20 seconds. So, I make it a point to get as much sun as possible. Don't wear sunscreen. We'll never ever wear sunscreen. I'm sure that's a topic for another day. But yeah, just as much natural sunlight as humanly possible. And that's the number one thing that helps, in my opinion, actually autoimmune conditions, any autoimmune condition. direct sunlight as much as possible. And then if you're still struggling, stuff like Carnivore, for me it was incredible, and that's kind of when I started learning more about it. And then I started using.
Where did you find it? Did you find it from Michaela Peterson?
That was I saw some of her podcasts around it, but yeah, there was there's a few creators that, it was very niche. I just started looking like ways that diet could fix a carnivore, and I saw some people fixing it with vegan diet, other diets. I just thought back to my upbringing, and I always just try to use logic. Like when it comes to the vegan stuff, I just grew up on a farm. I say grew up until I was 4 years old, and 9 months a year, there's no vegetables. Like, there's no fruits, there's no vegetables. So I'm like, this vegan thing just didn't really make sense to me. So I was like, okay, what does make sense to me is eating meat. And I can see why it's not like vegetables, why they would have anti-nutrients where they don't want to be eaten, right? Whereas obviously animals have claws and teeth and things to protect themselves. So yeah, just using my logic, I thought, let me test this out. And yeah, within 6 weeks, fully cleared it. Went back to the same doctors. They were like, how did you clear it? Blah, blah, this, that. And I was like, this is how. And also like, fuck you guys. I literally told them, I was like, wasn't that blunt, but I just said, be very, very cognizant. Please, next time when you tell someone that you're stuck with this thing for the rest of their life, when they're at their lowest point, like I'm mentally resilient enough, and also I have enough distrust in the medical system to know that you telling me that this is there's no way to clear this. It's just a management, I have to manage it or take all these medications and stuff just to manage. I was like, I'm mentally resilient enough to know that that's not the case. But you could really fuck some people up mentally by telling them that they're stuck with this for the rest of their life.
Last question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
For me, the thing I live by the most, and the phrase that I've always repeat to myself is, this too shall pass. And for me, that's been a good mechanism to, help go through my life, because I've had lowest lows, highest highs. And I'm sure, as you know, when you have the lowest lows, a lot of people stay in that place and they never recover from it. But vice versa, when people have the highest highs, they think that it's going to last forever. So always keeping that in my mind, that this too shall pass, whether that's good or bad. It's been a good remedy for whatever life throws at me.
Well, everyone, this has been your guest, Iman Gadzhi. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is the Jack Neel Podcast.